Hey guys, welcome back to MassiveSynth.com tutorials. Starting a new feature today. Going to be looking at recreating this dubstep loop using patches that have already been created in Massive, and looking at the other end of the spectrum, processing these sounds and just kind of processing that whole loop and kind of using various Logic plugins and mostly FabFilter stuff as well. So if you don't have the FabFilter plugins, you can download all the demos from the website just to try them out. So, and I'll also mention at this point as well, if you're not already subscribed to our YouTube channel, make sure you get on there and subscribe. youtube.com/ADSR tuts, where you'll find videos, all the videos we do for Massive, FMA, Reactor, Contact and Absynth. So yeah, this loop we've got here, I mean, basically there's that many tutorials I think now on YouTube that we've done, and also other people have done, covering various different types of bass sounds and lead sounds and wobbles and all of that. So we thought we'd start getting into a bit more kind of production end of stuff. So once you've made your sounds in Massive, how to kind of process them and produce them, and maybe do some writing with them and editing and stuff. So start off with this feature this month, making this kind of dubstep loop. So in this first tutorial we'll look at how I've created this loop, how I've edited all the sounds together and stuff, and we'll just discuss the kind of process I use to do that. And then in the following tutorials we'll look at some more processing production elements like EQ, compression, distortion, and just producing this loop as a whole really. So to create this kind of this dubstep loop, or a similar sort of kind of vibe really, with a lot of complextro and electro sort of sounds, that kind of chopped up sort of, you've got this kind of riff underpinning the whole thing, but then essentially you've just got loads of different kind of synths playing various different sounds to give that kind of very complex kind of edited feel. So for this loop I started off with these chords here, which is this sequence. And using that, then added some drums to that kind of chord sequence. So if I copy and paste these kicks and snares over here, just zoom in on this section. So basically I've written the drums, like the kick drums and the snares, to fall on the same, to a certain extent, the same hits as these kind of chord sounds. So you've got that nice kind of synchronized feel with the riff, the melody and the drums. So like the kind of kick drums kind of following to a certain extent these kind of chords here. And then the double snare hit at the end to follow those chords to give it that nice kind of punchy synchronized feel. And I've used, for these drums, there's a sample pack available on ADSRsounds.com. It's a crank sample pack that's got various massive patches, but also has got some really nicely edited and processed dubstep kind of hits. So this kick, really kind of heavy, well compressed kick, and I've actually used on another channel, I've used like a shorter version of that kick drum, and I've actually edited the tail and made sure I've kind of edited it to the 0 crossing point there, so I'm not going to get any click. Done a little fade as well, and I've also, on the mixer, I've dropped the level of this second kick by about 1.5 dB, so you get this nice variation, because I just thought with all those kick drums in the loop, to have the kind of really heavy hitting long sort of subby tail on all of them, it would just swamp the mix really. So I did a little edit with those and then group these two together. So in Logic I've created this group, so if I move this first kick channel, the second one will move with it, so I'll always retain that sort of that distance in level between the two of them, which is what I want. And then the snares from the same sample pack, this great like dubsteppy snare, and then to these drums, if I mute these chords, thought I'd add some hi-hats, and I just took this loop from a Sample Magic pack, and it just seemed to work really. It's a dubstep pack. Just added some really nice kind of shuffly hi-hats and a bit of top end to those drums, and then just kind of duplicated it over. And then did a little edit on that final thing, because on this loop here the snare doesn't really follow the double snare here, so we've got there, so kind of just chopped up this snare on the on this loop, and then just copied it and pasted it to sort of follow the kind of snare pattern that we programmed. Okay, so now let's look at this chord sequence and how we converted this and chopped it up basically, and started using some of those kind of bass sounds in the loop. Okay, so for starters we've got this chord sound here basically, that chord loop, and just in massive, I think I tweaked this preset. All the kind of sounds in here are taken from 2 packs I've done for MassiveSynth.com. The Complextro pack and the Dubstep Growl pack basically, and I just used presets from those 2 packs to put this kind of loop together. So lead, square bend, I think I've tweaked this a little bit, obviously because it's playing chords, make sure it's polyphonic, and just some kind of stacked up squares and saws really, some reverb, some chorus, and some width on there and stuff, just, you know, just kind of a nice sort of kind of lead sound on a 1 finger. It's alright, but stacked up in a chord sequence is pretty cool. So we had that chords kind of, we had those chords there, and then what I did was I started chopping them up, and in their place where there's a blank, so if you mute all of these now, for now you've got this chord sequence. And I've just taken stabs, the kind of first stab, and then I've edited this kind of stab here and just had the second half of these. Initially it was like that, and so the second half, and then just and obviously because with this lead sound I'm going to be adding a bass to it, so we're going to be rolling off some of that bottom end, so I thought I'd get a kind of bass underneath there. So this bass sound here, rudimentary sound, just kind of standard massive bass sound really, a nice raspy bit of top end and some kind of weight in there to add to that lead sound. And it's just following, I just copied those chords over, and then, I mean this sounds monophonic anyway, this bass sound, but I just wanted to play the lower notes of that chord sequence and muted the higher notes basically. So, and so with the 2 together, and that's just reinforcing those kind of chords, because I'm dropping these kind of bass sounds in between, but when it was like just the chord sequence playing, there wasn't enough weight in there, so I wanted to add a little bass kind of sound in. So you had, if I mute that bass, hear how thinner it sounds, it just adds that bit of weight. So if we start on this kind of first bar here, so basically what I've done is chopped out this middle bit of the MIDI and added it up to this kind of bully bass sound up here, which is quite a cool sort of, just to kind of dirty up the loop a little bit. And then this kind of end bit, this wobble plector here. And then wanted a kind of second half of this sequence to complement that first half. So we started off with this rudimentary bass sound that I think is very similar to this. I think these 2 are the same patch, but what I've done with this one, I've tweaked it to just be a bit more plain, kind of simple bass sound. So this is what it's like. It originally was a bit more modulation on there. So we had that second set of chords, and I've just added this. It's just, you know, what is it? C sharp note there. It just fills in, and then, you know, kind of play that full, those 2 bars again. And what you want to start doing really is getting all these sounds to kind of speak to each other, that talk and response kind of effect to use. So next up, I put another one of these plector sounds back in. And then wanted something, a kind of little fill sound at the end of this section as well. So introduce this wobble. And then we've got this kind of first section sorted, and I'll just like duplicate these sounds to the second half and then start editing them a bit more to create it similar to the first half of the section, but we've got some nice little variation and extra fills going on. So okay, so for this kind of the second 2 bars of this section, initially I copied this MIDI over here, and point out as well all these kind of MIDI notes I've got on these bass sounds. It's just the chord sequence, and I've deleted various sections. Obviously all these bass sounds are monophonic, so they're only going to play 1 note at a time anyway, but with Logic, the piano roll, it'll play the top note unless you kind of mute them. So I muted all these top notes, and I varied it up a little bit here as well, so you've got a bit more of a kind of riff going on with these bass sounds. But that's essentially what's going on with the MIDI. It's nothing too complicated really. It was just a case of these chords, chopping them up and reassigning them to different kind of bass patches. So this second half, we had this bass sound in here, that bully. So I've added another one of those, but I've done a little edit with this kind of bass sound in massive. Go to the oscillator section, make sure that this kind of up and down, the down section is minus 24 semitones. So if I just do a pitch bend on this MIDI here, which I've done like that, quite a heavy pitch bend, going to get that effect, which just from in relation to the first half of the sequence is just providing a variation. And a 4 on the end of there, that pitches right down, and the bass kind of gets slightly empty because it goes so low. So I thought I could add an extra sound on there to just kind of like brighten that slight section up a little bit. And this scribble wobble, got quite a lot of high frequency content, so that's kind of gone on top of the second half of this pitch bend down section, so you get, sounded pretty cool. Added another one of these, which is the same as what we've got here, so I've just copied it over basically. And then these chords obviously at the end of this 1 bar section, and then the final bar, rather than repeat this, I thought we could have a similar sort of thing going on, but with just some extra edits and stuff. So a couple of different sounds, very just a little, I mean I chopped these MIDI notes in half. Initially I think I had this, but then I chopped it in half and added an extra sound, so you get, if I just solo these, and then this crudometer as well. And that's been muted actually. This sound needs to come back in swarm, just for the very last note, and just hit on that same snare to just give that extra kind of impact on the feel you get there. And that's the loop really. I mean, it really was a case of just getting that chord sequence, chopping it up, and just experimenting with placing the MIDI notes on, you know, different instances of Massive basically. So just created numerous instances of Massive, loaded up some presets, and just toyed around with it really. If I mute the chords, you get an idea of the bass sounds on their own. So you've got that heavily kind of sort of edited. Well, it's not heavily edited. It sounds heavily edited, but it's actually quite simple what I've done there. But just using various different sounds. And because we followed that chord sequence, we've got a little bit of a sort of riff going on, that's followed that chords. So if you had those chords in the breakdown section and this was the drop, it would have that relevance, this kind of chord sequence. So yeah, so that's the kind of loop put together. So yeah, part 2, we're going to be looking at sort of EQing some of these sounds, processing them a little bit more, maybe just tweaking the patches slightly so they're kind of more ideal for processing. And then in the later tutorials we'll get into a bit more kind of compression, distortion, and just really producing this loop up. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that tutorial. Any questions, please get in touch, and make sure you go and check out massivesynth.com, where you can find numerous tutorial videos and what have you that we've done for Native Instruments Massive, and also the forum on there, discussion forum. Any questions you got about the synth or any tutorials you'd like to see moving forward, just let us know on there. Alright, hope to see you again soon. Thanks for watching. Cheers. Bye.